In May 2002, as part of the Golden Jubilee celebrations, a very special evening was organised in Home Park in the shadow of Windsor Castle to mark Her Majesty's love of horses. As Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, said, this was a very special tribute to the Queen by the equestrian community. The Queen and Prince Philip arrived at the purpose-built venue in an Ascot landau, drawn by 4 Windsor greys with 2 postilions and 2 outriders. Following behind was the captain's escort of the Household Cavalry, the Lifeguards and the Blues and Royals. The royal couple were greeted by Colonel Sir Piers Bengough, chairman of the organising committee and the Queen's former representative at Ascot.
This is the story of a lifetime's love of horses.
The first act depicts wartime. It's 1942, and although the Battle of Britain has been fought and won, Prime Minister Winston Churchill famously said,
"In this year of 1942, we have before us many long months of struggle and of suffering. Our task is to wage war by sea, land, and air with all our might and with all the strength that God can give us."
Running parallel with the wartime theme is the Pony Club, with riders having lessons. The men may have gone to war, but the children could still learn to ride, albeit under very strict supervision. But despite the hardship, life could still be enjoyed, and when the young soldiers had some leave, they certainly knew how to party, as the riding lessons continued. Horse-drawn vehicles delivering coal and corn, and the horse replacing the tractor in the fields. While the governess drops in on the riding lessons in her pony and trap to see how the children are getting on. Well, of course, boys always tried to show off. The most famous British wartime singer was undoubtedly Dame Vera Lynn, and her White Cliffs of Dover, one of her most famous songs.
We'd had 3 years of that war, and it felt at times as though it would never end. But at least the Battle of Britain had been fought and won, and during Wings for Victory week in 1942, they decided to hold the first Windsor Horse and Dog Show. And the idea was to make enough to buy a Hurricane fighter. I was only a young groom, but I remember it as if it were yesterday. I've often thought that to love horses, really love them, is a wonderful gift. And it's all the better because it will last you all your life. For a young girl who's destined to be the monarch, it must have been a gift beyond price.
But the wartime scene wouldn't be complete without a Morris Minor or an Army Land Rover.
No one ever came to grief, except honourable grief, through riding horses. No hour is lost that is spent in the saddle.
All very much to Her Majesty's liking. But every leave was all too brief, and it was soon time to say goodbye. Our young soldier asked his girlfriend to look after his horse while he was away, but she told him she couldn't, as she joined up too. So the horse had to grow fat in the field. However, when our gallant soldier returned from the war, he would join the riding troop of the Royal Horse Artillery. From 1880 to 1939, a succession of Royal Horse Artillery batteries has been stationed in London, the last being mechanised in 1939. After the Second World War, King George VI decided he would like to have a troop of Royal Horse Artillery mounted and dressed in traditional uniform to take part in ceremonial occasions. In 1946, the new riding troop, RHA, moved into barracks at St John's Wood, London. In 1947, he inspected the newly formed riding troop and, during a pre-lunch drink, asked if they would like a new name. After a number of suggestions, the King declared that, so long as it was his, he didn't mind what they called it. He then crossed out the word riding on a piece of paper and changed it to King's. And so the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, was named and has remained as such to this day. When on parade with its guns, the troop takes precedence over all other regiments and has the honour of parading on the right of the line. The troop's duties as part of the household troops include the firing of royal salutes on royal anniversaries and state occasions, providing a gun carriage and team of black horses for state and military funerals, taking part in Remembrance Day, the Lord Mayor's Show, and the Queen's Birthday Parade. The King's Troop currently totals 120 soldiers. Around 70 of those are in the arena, with the rest working behind the scenes. 50 are mounted. They are led by the troop captain, Captain Will Roberts. Following that trumpet call by the parade commander's trumpeter, the gun teams then form the wagon wheel. The officers form the hub of the wheel, the detachments form the spokes, and the gun teams form the rim. The gun teams then reform into their half batteries to perform the small drive in a smaller arena marked up by soldiers with lances or markers. The troop now perform a series of high-speed manoeuvres, including a change of rein, half-battery circles, chain loops and scissors. Captain Will Roberts barks the order, and the troop perform the march past. To the Royal Artillery's slow march, the parade commander leads a salute to Her Majesty the Queen. After this order, the action. The troop gallop forward and the officers and detachments dismount on the gun line and unhook the guns. The horses, trumpeters and drivers then canter to the far end of the arena before the order to fire. The guns will first fire individually and then as a salvo. After the order, cease fire, rear limber up, the guns are picked up. A scene more akin to a battlefield from times past. The final phase is the gallop out, where the troop canters past the stage and circles at the far end of the arena. The tempo of the music, Bonnie Dundee, increases gradually as the teams gallop out.
After the war, the world seemed to have got smaller, and the Commonwealth nearer.
During Her Majesty's reign, she has visited some 325 countries, so this act features some of the famous equestrian traditions from a selection of those countries. The parade is led by the Garde Républicaine from France. The Queen's visits to the United States are represented by 3 cowboys, but are led by a Frenchman, Gérard Napus, on a Spanish horse. He leads the Devil's Horseman and rides alongside his son Daniel and daughter Camilla, riding a painted horse. The The United States are also represented by the New York Police. The department was first established in 1871 to deal with the problem of the reckless galloping down the streets by saddle and carriage horses. Across the border, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, with the idea of the first Canadian Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, and the royal prefix was first bestowed by King Edward VII in June 1904. Today they have a workforce of just under 21,000. Australia is represented by 4 jackaroos, their version of the cowboy. And from Pakistan, officers and men from the Guide Cavalry Regiment, 27th Cavalry Regiment, 19th Lancers Regiment, and the President's Bodyguard. 6 members of the Indian Cavalry take part in the parade. 4 are from the 61st Cavalry and 2 are from the Remount Veterinary Corps. The Arab Horse Society is represented by 4 horses with their riders wearing Arab costume, flowing black kaftans over their riding gear. All the countries taking part in this parade are represented by their national flag, carried by members of the Pony Club. From Kenya, members of the Mounted Police. The Queen was in Kenya when she learnt of her father's death and her own accession. But Her Majesty's most frequent visits have been to France, and their Garde Républicaine are performing La Reprise d'Étendon. They exist to protect the centres of power in Paris, and particularly to escort the president wherever he goes. They were founded in 1849 and are now accommodated in 22 barracks in and around Paris. The cavalry regiment has some 530 horses.
Wherever we were in the world, James and I were always delighted to travel back to England for the racing.
Racing is the sport of kings, the joy of queens, and the ruination of knaves. The rest of the pack have to take their chance, and the devil take the hindmost.
The Pony Betcher in the second Pony Grand National. Honest John, the bookie who never owes. I'll go bottle 2-1 the 2 Pony. 6 has turned round at the start. 11 is in front up the start. The 7-2 charge. The 11 now. Are getting away, and 12's away. And 12 leads from 4. They're coming to the first. 12 shoots through on the inside. 4's on the outside, but 12 leads. 11's in second place. Then comes the grey in third. It's 11 takes it up on the far side. 11 leads from 12. There's clear. 11 going very strongly. Got a 4-length lead from 12. 2/3. And it's 11 coming up to the next hurdle. And 11 is clear. Running away with this 11 from 12. 9 on the outside. 1's well placed too. But 11 still leads. It's 11, the 7-2 John. It's 11's going to win the Shetland Pony Grand National. 11 wins. 9 is second. It's close to the third. No, don't pay. I'm skint. I've got no money. I'm skint. Can't afford to pay. Can't pay you.
The sport of steeplechasing had its origins in the hunting field.
Hunting is the sport of kings, the image of war without its guilt, and only 5 and 20% of its danger. The horse and the hound were made for each other, and nature threw in the fox as a connecting between the two.
Hounds from the North Cotswold Hunt enjoy a frolic in the arena under the watchful supervision of their master and huntsman, Mr. Nigel Peel.
Our forebears matched their horses to gallop fast and far, before the days of courses built up with birch and bar. O'er hedges leaping higher, but needing still a guide, they saw the church's spire. From point to point, let's ride!
The first steeplechases, or point-to-points, often took place at night to make them more daring. And the riders in nightshirts depict the midnight steeplechase, made famous by the sporting artist Cecil Aldin. But as the midnight riders gallop away, we move on to the rich man's sport, flat racing. The high spot in the calendar is Royal Ascot, when the best of human fashion and thoroughbred horse adorn Ascot Heath in the middle of June.
It was the Queen's great-grandfather, King Edward VII, who started his own stud at Sandringham, and he bred 2 Derby winners, Persimmon and Diamond Jubilee. Now, someone told me on the morning of her coronation, the Queen's first thought was to inquire about the health of her horse, Oriole, who was running in the Derby 4 days later.
In the Ascot landaus used for the royal procession before each day's racing at Royal Ascot are members of the winning British modern pentathlon team, being serenaded by the Ascot Gavotte from My Fair Lady.
Royal Ascot is the place where the hat is almost more important than the horse. But in the end, it has to be admitted that the most elegant creature there is definitely the horse.
The Parade of Racing Silks is to mark the work of the Rehabilitation of Racehorses charity, which has 3 centres round the country. The famous colours include those of the Aga Khan, seen on the 18-year-old Owen, winner of 6 races. Following behind, the colours of the Prince of Wales on PK, shortly to be rehomed to go hacking. Prince Khalid Abdullah's colours are borne by the 17-year-old Love Legend. Then the colours of Trevor Hemmings on Gilderdale, now 20, and the winner of 23 races. The Princess Royal's colours on King's Rhapsody. The Queen's colours are on the Argonaut, one of the late Queen Mother's most successful chasers, and are also seen on Brays of Mar, bred by the late Queen Mother. And last, but certainly not least, probably the most loved chaser of them all, Desert Orchid, winner of 34 of his 70 starts. Now 23 years young, he's ridden by former regular work rider Rodney Bolt and still looks like he could race tomorrow. Severed heads carried by Mongolian hordes demonstrate what many believe to be the origins of polo. It might also support Prince Philip's theory that the level of noise was in inverse ratio to the quality of play. The first recorded game took place in 600 BC in Persia. and only became recognisable in its modern form around the middle of the 19th century, when soldiers and merchants in northern India adopted a game being played by their hillsmen. The name polo comes from pulu, the Indian word for the wood from which the ball was made. The word chukka comes from the Indian word for a circle or round.
King George VI enjoyed polo, and so did the Duke of Edinburgh, and his uncle, Lord Mountbatten, wrote the definitive book on polo. So it's no wonder that the royal family love the game, and the Queen has bred some notable polo ponies.
Another game on horseback is horseball, a rugged contact sport which is a cross between rugby, riding and basketball. The teams are 4 players. The ball is a small football fitted with 6 leather handles, and to score you have to make a minimum of 3 consecutive passes and then shoot through a hoop. The ball can also change sides with tackles, and one of the most exciting parts of the game is when the ball is dropped and the players then have to lean down to grab it, hanging only by their stirrups. Polo cross is lacrosse on horseback and regarded by some as the poor man's polo. It's played on a small pitch about a third of the size of a polo pitch. There are 6 players in each team, with only 4 playing at any one time. The game originated in England but is now very popular in Australia. Prince Philip was a very keen polo player, but when he had to give up, he took to competitive carriage driving. The Queen has always given great support, being very interested in the breeding of royal carriage horses, both Greys and Cleveland Bays.
Carriage driving is a fine art, combining the use of rein and whip with voice, sometimes cajoling, sometimes commanding, but always encouraging. The whole skill based on discipline and trust.
The rugged face of John Parker, seen here driving the London to Bristol mail coach. To stop a mail coach was punishable by death by hanging in the 18th and 19th centuries, when highwaymen weren't just characters from folklore. All sorts of carriage, but some more sedate than others. King Charles looks comfortable, but could he be on the way to the Tower? In the capable hands of Trevor Kimber, a lovely pair of palominos, Toby and Topaz. Some intent on cutting corners and going well. Ginny Elliott and Lucinda Green, just a one-day event for them on this occasion. A new role for Peter Scudamore, former champion jockey, in a scene from carriage driving trials, more familiar to His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. And driving a demi-male phaeton owned by the Queen, but carrying the flag of the United States, is Prince Philip's friend George Weymouth. And Geoffrey Osborne driving 2 Welsh ponies, Bill and Ben, and showing how the scurry should be done. Ushered in by the pipes, the scene is preceded by the Balmoral sociable carriage, as it passes in the shadow of a somewhat older Windsor Castle, which dates back to William the Conqueror. The Balmoral sociable was used by Queen Victoria on her grand tour of Europe in 1868, and in more recent times by the Queen as a child going to Crathy Church with her parents. Behind the carriage, dressage horses from the Catherson stud, led by its owner, Jenny Lauriston Clark. They are joined by the Jubilee Highland dancers in a Scottish reel, horse and human dancing together. Members of the Riding for the Disabled Association with a special wave for Her Majesty. Their president since 1985 has been the Princess Royal, and members of the Side Saddle Association compliment this elegant scene. There follows what can only be described as poetry in motion. The musicians under the direction of Michael McDermott, the music, the gale, made famous as the theme tune for the classic film Last of the Mohicans. Highland ponies in the foreground add to this Scottish scene. Horses also from the Horse Rangers Association, based at the Royal Mews at Hampton Court Palace. The beauty of the horse, and never better displayed.
When I was a little girl, I thought and breathed horses. Joan, the grey mare on whom I learned to ride. Tommy, my first adored, horrid little pony, who always tried to lie down when we crossed a stream and bucked and tipped me off when we landed after a jump. My uncle's great hunter, which I was allowed to ride round the paddock. The lordly racehorse in the stables down the road. And 100 other horses of my imagination. All night long, They walked and trotted and cantered through my dreams. And sometimes they still do.
I will not change my horse with any that treads. He bounds from the earth. When I bestride him, I soar. I am a hawk. He trots the air. The earth sings when he touches it. The basest horn of his hoof is more musical than the pipe of Hermes. He is pure air and fire. And the dull elements of earth and water never appear in him, but only patient stillness when his rider mounts him.
Indeed, he is a horse.
To the music from Boys and Girls Come Out to Play, members of the Pony Club prepare to do just that and play some Prince Philip Pony Club games. The Pony Club was first started in 1929, and the games were the brainchild of the Duke of Edinburgh and Colonel Sir Mike Ansell, director of the Horse of the Year show. The games were designed to teach rhythm and balance, plus a general feel for the horse. Many of the audience will know how it feels firsthand, and some will have a fading memory rekindled.
Well, I need you. Well, I need you. Well, I need you. Sometimes I feel a little sad inside. Well, my baby mistreats me. Never too hard. Transpiration in the back of the pack. I love to hear the rhythm of the clickety clack and see the lonesome missus with a smoke in the stack. I pal around with Democratic fellas named Mac. Take me now back to the track, Jack. Choo-choo, whoa, 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 shoo-boogie. Choo-choo, boogie. Take me now back to the track, Jack.
The Pony Club, an idea that grew and grew.
There are few greater pleasures in life than having your children share your own interests. Although I admit that there are times when I wish my daughter had taken up knitting, and I'll bet the Queen feels the same.
one of the highlights of the performance, the parade of the Queen's horses, led by members of the household cavalry, and behind them, the King's troop. In the first carriage, former royal jockeys Willie Carson, champion jockey 5 times, and Joe Mercer, most famous for his partnership with the mighty Brigadier Gerard. And sitting opposite them, the horse whisperer himself, Monty Roberts, invited by Her Majesty in 1989 to visit her here at Windsor Castle, where he started off over 20 royal horses during his 4-day demonstration. The Beaufort Phaeton, driven by Arthur Scholl, now retired after 22 years head coachman, with Robert Chambers, 28 years service, and Bob Wilkinson, who rode as an outrider at Her Majesty's coronation. The Queen's pony phaeton, the same carriage the Queen drove to victory as Princess Elizabeth at the Royal Windsor Horse Show in 1945, accompanied by her late sister, Princess Margaret. Leonidas, successor to Janus as the drum horse of the Blues and Royals, Corporal of Horse Stuart Marsh, salutes with his drumsticks. Ramillies, the largest horse in the Queen's army, standing at over 18 hands, and ridden by Lance Corporal Harnety of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards. Her Majesty's stud grooms, Terry Pendry, present head groom and in his 8th year, Roger Oliver, 25 years in service, Tony Barnett, now retired, and Brian Hyam, 44 years with the Duke of Beaufort. Janus, bred by the Queen and joined the army in 1989, number 7280 when he signed on to the household cavalry, now enjoying a well-earned retirement. Cruachan III, the mischievous mascot of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, led by Lance Corporal Colin McMurray. Sanction, St James and Party Time, 3 of the Queen's hacks. Tinkerbell, the favourite mount of the Earl of Wessex and homebred. And her son, the 5-year-old Peter Pan, ridden by Captain Richard Waygood of the Lifeguards, who rode at his first badminton horse trials this year, finishing in 20th place. And under the sovereign saddlecloth, Tiger Lily, yearling daughter of Tinkerbell. High Tea, a polo pony bred by the Queen and ridden by her owner, the Honourable Mrs. Charles Pearson. Balmoral Moss and Balmoral Curlew lead a group of Highland ponies brought especially from the estate to be part of the pageant. Philippa, His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh's charger, for trooping the colour. She is wearing the kit of the Grenadier Guards, of which His Royal Highness is Colonel-in-Chief. Behind her, a thoroughbred broodmare from the Royal Estate. Rambler's Lottie, Her Majesty's Cleveland Bay broodmare and 6 times a champion at the Royal Windsor Horse Show. Balmoral Kyle and Balmoral Katie, 2 Haflinger ponies which will be used for trekking and stalking in the Highlands. And Skylark, one of Her Majesty's Fell Pony broodmares, and another Red Rosette winner at this year's Royal Windsor Horse Show.
And then came they all, wondrously attired, magnificent in scarlet and gold, and the horses splendidly caparisoned, as proud as they.
The musical rides start with the household cavalry, led by Captain Robert Denny of the Life Guards. Behind him, the drum horse Constantine and 4 state trumpeters. Then 4 riding instructors with the lie-down horses, and completing the team, 8 troopers each from the Life Guards and the Blues and Royals. In the foreground, the Metropolitan Police perform a shortened version of their musical ride. The full version has been performed all over the country, including the Royal Tournament, the Horse of the Year Show, and Olympia. They're led by Inspector Alan Hiscox. In the background, 70 horses and riders from across the country form a mass-mounted police display coordinated by the Greater Manchester Police. As the finale begins, the mass-mounted police sidestep their way elegantly into position, and all the participants involved in this unique equestrian pageant take their positions for the curtain call. Young and old from near and far, black, bay, brown and grey, horses and ponies of all types and sizes are part of a magnificent sight in a magnificent setting. Jenny Lauriston Clark and her Catherston stud horses and riders. The Pony Club members, a never-to-be-forgotten experience for all of them. And the household cavalry paved the way for the final performance of the night, the presentation of the Gold State Coach.
I will never forget the coronation.
We managed to get seats near the Abbey, and we sat there shivering in the early morning. I remembered reading about the coronation of Queen Elizabeth I,
She wore a robe of cloth of gold, a small coronet upon her head, and she sat in a chariot covered with gold brocade. Behind her rode her master of horse, leading the Queen's white hackney draped in cloth of gold. In the city there was a pageant showing a young girl and an old man depicting time, and she said,
Time? It is time that hath brought me here.
And then, through the rainy drizzle of that grey day, there she was.
Like a shaft of sunlight came the gold state coach, drawn by 8 splendid grey horses, and inside it, a radiant Queen Elizabeth II.
The coach has been brought from its home at the Royal Mews, where it is kept on permanent display. It was last used at the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977 to carry the Queen and Prince Philip to a Thanksgiving service at St Paul's Cathedral. It was at the beginning of the reign of George III that a very superb state coach was ordered to be built and no expense spared. It cost a total of £7,652, 16 shillings and 9 halfpenny, which was a colossal sum in those days. The coach has been used for every coronation since that of George VI, since when grey horses have pulled the coach. It was originally driven from a box by a coachman until King Edward VII, who had the hammer cloth and box removed because he thought it prevented people from seeing him and the Queen. He changed it to the present configuration of 8 postillion horses. The framework of the body consists of 8 palm trees which, branching at their tops, support the roof. The 4 corner trees, which each rise from a lion's head, are covered in trophies symbolising the victories of Great Britain in the 7 Years' War, which had ended the year before the coach was completed. The body is slung by braces covered in Morocco leather and decorated with gilt buckles held by 4 tritons. The 2 front figures draw the coach by cables attached to them and stretched over their shoulders. They proclaim the approach of the monarch of the ocean through conches used as horns. The rear figures carry tridents. On the centre of the roof are 3 cherubs who represent the spirits of England, Scotland and Ireland. These support the royal crown and hold in their hands the sceptre, the sword of state and the ensign of knighthood. Their bodies are draped with laurels which fall to the corners of the roof. The state coach has painted panels on the sides, front and back. They were painted by Giovanni Battista Cipriani, a Florentine historical painter and engraver who came to London in 1755. The state coach can proceed only at a walk, where all the other coaches from the Royal Mews can be used at a trot. The 8 specially trained horses have a postilion rider on the near side of each pair, a groom walking at each horse's head, and a brakeman walking behind. To get each horse ready in full harness for the Jubilee procession would have taken about 8 hours.
Who needs Pegasus when he has that horse which takes such joy in flying, must jump higher and longer and further, must always be in front, always be faster, and yet at the end is never mean, jealous, or ungenerous, but takes pure joy in running and jumping and getting there first? And how fortunate the rider who is privileged to sit on his back and run and fly with him.